Well, good afternoon as we're sitting here at LTV on this beautiful Thursday, late afternoon, early evening, almost early evening, um, Thursday of the 11 9 23, November 9th, 2023, here with the Hello Hello Show. And my name is Haim Mizrahi, continuing with the tradition of public access and the tradition of the Hello Hello Show that's been on the air now, I discover, since 1980. Through which I experienced it as a viewer and as a producer of LTV, and then of course when Dougherty, God bless his soul, that passed away about 2 months ago at an age of 101, broke me into the concept of public access. I remember when he approached me first, I said, "And you want me to do all this and not being paid?" And he said, "What do you think?" So now, 24 years later, we're pumping and we're accumulating and erecting and building and composing. And of course, not to fail to mention the contribution by Fraser Dougherty, of course, with a group of people that share the same vision. Francis Ann, there was huge support behind that concept to bring us to where we are in the shape and form that LTV is presenting itself. Steve Romm is here with us today. And on a serious note, by the way, this time I'm going to try to be as serious as possible when it comes to interacting with Steve, even though we're making a fool of ourselves all the time, and and it's tolerable only because we're both intelligent enough, or
To deal with it.
something like that. So um, I don't know if I should say provocative in a way where uh, with uh, engaged to have you uh, come to the conclusion that you can initiate. And I remember when I met Steve in the early stages, he was too much for me because I was uh, with zero experience when it comes to painting. As an artist, I was always an artist, a musician, whatnot. But painting was alien to me, and I was embarking and finding myself in the midst of the world of painting suddenly. No evolutionary process, no nothing. So I looked at him. Once I got over the awkwardness and the peculiarness, I realized that uh, if I base my choice of investment and time and engagement on the basis of what he suggests to me, I will prevail. And indeed I did, because even he noticed it. Steve, I love you. Good to see you here. What's up?
Good to see you. You're one of the few people that I've stuck with over what 27 years that we've known each other, who
It's painful.
actually
Don't say
it,
that.
it, it hurts. I mean, it really it's painful. It's been a painful 27 years. Things I could have done
Did you say
without.
27?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Is it
okay.
longer
I
than
thought I.
27? Feels like an eternity.
uh,
But you're one of the few people, very few people that I've seen actually progress in their art. Having started out the way you did, where you are today, is a huge leap. And you're one of the few people that can take advice, whether asked for or not, it's irrelevant, but take advice and actually put it into effect. So I don't give compliments very often, uh, but I will give compliments to you because you have grown tremendously over the years, and
um,
it's appreciated.
by the way, apropos what you're saying now, as you were taking your guidance with your mentors, and of course, you're talking about sketching, about light, shadow, dark, angles, composition, skeleton. What portion or part of it was uh, alternative, so much so that it encourages you to experiment, even in the midst of that rigidity of tradition and technique, that there's certain things you cannot waver. That much I know.
Right.
You have to stick with the plan, and then if you as good as you're supposed to be, then you would identify where and when and how you would insert that kind of alternative experimental aspect of it. Was that evident when you were with your mentors? And I assume that your mentors were like traditional and conventional, allowed themselves to tell you, hey, listen, by the way, uh, abstract expressionism, modernism, that do exist there.
I
It's an
have I have no
it's
problem with
available
it.
to you.
Yeah, I mean I've gone in that direction, as you know. There's I would use the analogy that you can't build a house without a foundation. Now, you can build it on a slab. Is it as good? I don't know. But to me, art is based upon the beginnings of what you learn, how you progress. And that's the same with sculpture, with writing, any form of art. You have to start
What do
someplace.
you think is it that they failed not to teach you? I want to really be pinpointed by pointing with you right now.
To
Take
be
advantage of the fact that you're here.
to be honest, I don't think they failed in anything because at a certain point, it's like um, there's a certain point in your life if you have children, which you do, that you have to push them out the door and say, "Hey, you're now on your own. Grow up. Take care of your life. Go into the world and make your way." And I think that was my education. They gave me all the foundations I needed and then said, "Do what you want with it. Either use it, don't use it to express yourself. You could do any kind of painting you wanted. You could go abstract, you could go traditional. It didn't make any difference. Once the basics are there, they apply to everything. There's a really interesting analogy again in that certain artists like Rothko, who didn't follow any of those foundations, their work is limited in time because they painted directly on raw linen without any.
Wouldn't you have loved to see what Rothko erased and ignored in the
He
process of
couldn't do
achieving?
that. He couldn't
No,
do
but I
that.
mean, can you imagine? Oh, come on, he must have
No,
had.
when you go into Marlborough,
He,
if you look at Rothko's work, if there's a red
I'm, I'm,
area,
I'm
you
talking.
can't change it
I
once
want you
it's
to
there.
forget Rothko and colors. Let's talk about these shapes and proximity to one another. There's a lot of similarity between him and de Kooning, but of course there are the differences. But what do you think he did not include and threw away and never used?
I would
Because there's no way he just arrived perfectly to that composition that makes just about anyone feel very safe and comfortable, and then add to color the color scheme to
I
it.
would suspect, and it's only a guess, I would suspect that the way he did it, because of what I've seen of his paintings, I would suspect that what he did is experiment. And then if it didn't work, he literally had to throw it away. Because when you paint on raw canvas, raw linen in this case, it soaks into the linen. There's no substrate, there's no gesso, there's no white lead paint, there's no anything. There's no way to paint over it and change it. It's there. And the problem is that over a period of time, that paint is going to begin to fade. And unlike a traditional painting, in fact, I ran into somebody the other day who had the same kind of background I did. And he said he just ran into somebody who was a restorer. And they had, I don't remember who the artist was, but they had a famous painting. It was face down, and they were slowly and methodically grinding and sanding off the canvas on the back of the painting, just leaving a layer of paint. And at that point, they were going to then replace the canvas with an archival glue of some sort between the paint and the new canvas, which would
That's
preserve it
insane,
for
huh?
another 1,000 years. But you can't do that with a Rothko. Once it dies, once the paint fades, it's gone. There's no way to restore it other than copy it. Yes, you could have somebody come in who's a great copy artist and paint the same
Do you
thing on
think that
linen.
the greats of the last 100 years always welcomed the teas and implemented it and did things that the result of these things would have been to completely annihilate a composition in order to achieve a new composition? To what extent do you think they travel to not to fear the like I did, for example, with Michael Kenegan? I talked to him about a concept for a long time, and it was very difficult to get that across. Not because of some speech problems or reasoning problem or difficulty. It was just impossible. I had to kind of. So one day, one of the few times, or maybe he came to my studio maybe twice. Um, he was there, and suddenly I just came to me and I said, uh, "Michael, by the way, apropos what I was talking to you about and all this, I can actually show you now what I mean. I took this painting that was absolutely finished, 24 by 36, done, really beautiful painting."
Right.
He says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm trying to pay attention now because this is what I was not able verbally to explain to you, apropos what we were talking about. And I mentioned that he understood. And I went on this canvas. Forget about the hoodlumish attitude, you know, if you know what I mean by saying
Right,
hoodlumish
right.
attitude. Really aggressive, maybe even undermining this whole idea of what's really happening. And the only thing he could say after he saw that it was a 3 to 5 minute thing. And I said, that's what I meant when I finished. First thing he tells me is, you are a better man than I am. And then he proceeded to say, I would never be able to do that. If only to say that I'm actually, why should I supposedly ruin my painting, paint over my painting, use it as a background type of thing, while that rationale did not agree with him. But his statement told me, yes, it works. The impact that you got out of this person tells you the story that's familiar to you, to me, because I based everything upon that knowledge. And it's in more ways than one, I saw that in you in a very delicate way, on the other hand, but the same kind of act of deliverance. And it felt familiar, even though our styles are completely opposite to one another, but in more ways than one, not. And we proved it by working together.
You're
But,
dealing.
but do you know what I mean? How
I know exactly what you mean.
so
But
even
Michael,
though you go with the powder and the so delicate and so
but that's
romantic and so intimate, but under the surface there was exactly that the same level of conviction.
Michael had a mindset. Okay, if you looked at Michael's work, whether you looked at before he died, what he was painting then, and if you looked at what he was doing 25 years earlier, there's really no time difference. What you would put up from 25 years earlier, from just before he died, was essentially the same thing. If I put up one of your paintings from 25 years ago when you started painting and one of your paintings from today, the difference is night and day.
Oh yeah.
If I put up my paintings from when I first started painting and I put up what I'm painting today with everything in between, and the transition from surrealism to primitivism to landscapes with powders and glazes to total abstracts, there's a huge
Definitely
change.
impressionism.
But underneath all of it is the basic structure of how to paint.
Yes.
And that is my background that I learned. So it gives me the ability to change things.
How many times you did not do anything about something because you already knew a lot about that which you are about to do and decided not to do it because you know how well you can do it? If it makes sense, please answer.
It makes sense, except that's not the case. If you look at all the different things that I did,
Independently speaking, because I'm not talking necessarily relating to your style or mine,
you
the act itself.
um my
Don't answer
painting.
me through you. Don't be
No,
held because we're
I'm
gonna do
giving you.
poetry very soon. Be careful.
I'm giving you an answer.
I'm
It's
trying
like
to.
when you go to therapy, there are two brains that you have. You have the front brain, which is what you want to hear or the therapist wants to hear, and then there's the back brain, which is where the truth lies. And it's really hard to get that out. If you can get that out, then you're doing well in therapy. So my answer is that the understructure, the background, is the same no matter what I'm painting. What's on the surface, whether it goes from surrealism to landscapes to primitives, whatever it is, the foundation is the same. I have the knowledge of how to paint. There isn't anything that I've ever thought of that I haven't painted. Have I failed at times? Absolutely. If you don't fail, you don't progress. So my answer is that if I dream it, I paint it. Doesn't always work. That's my answer. Do you fail? Of course you fail. Do you have a 100% success rate? No. Are some paintings much better than others?
Okay,
Absolutely.
and my answer to that would say he he told her to get out of the rain and this way she can ease her pain. She wrote to her brother in the distance, and she meant, maybe for instance, she would take that trip nevertheless and not pay attention to that which was said to her unless. So she found herself traveling through the rim of lands and realized that she was carrying two wands, and she never failed to second guess herself because love is in the air. And you go ahead and figure um, how to get to Bel Air.
What I paint would
Did
make you faint. What you write opens up some light. I am here, which is really dear. The fact that we're both doing poetry. What rhymes with poetry except poetry?
And in the train of thought that arrived to the dry time of layers, he visualized not more than just a few flavors, but ahead of the equation that spelled the light above, he never dreamed that he will find himself in love.
I like that, but I'm the only one wearing a black hat. How come we're dressed alike? I don't know. Maybe you have something in spite.
First, you wear a hat and I wear none. That leaves me to believe that I am one. If, despite the chain of thought in the slope of straight surface, I still nevertheless dream in a chain of thought that speaks for preface.
You have hair. I do not. Does that make a difference?
Or
I
not.
think we're both on the spot.
Yes. And thank God you don't have hair. I have enough of all the package that is facing me in front of me right now and here. But I hear those voices that tell me over and over and over and over again to adhere.
Well, that's pretty dear. So, is it important that we talk alike? Both of us in front of a mic?
The rollover of bouncing by way of sound glimmering, and you download the return home that I forgot exactly what was the last word of the first sentence.
Shimmering. Our paintings are shimmering. They glow in the light. Whether it's day or whether it's night, makes no difference what we do. The fact that we paint is what I and you, we do together in different ways. Each one passes many days.
Once I thought maybe one extra will help it to thrive. Now I changed into the slowing down because the machine allows me to do that. But I stopped since because it was sinful.
Haim bought some paint. It's really red, which he couldn't do if he was dead. So paint he will at day or night with red glowing, which will hurt your sight.
Leave my paint alone. Do not speak in public about my red. I made you laugh. That's good. So, leave my paint alone. It's not alone. It needs to be alone. I need that sacredness of it. It helps me focus when I realize that it is as I perceive it to be and never anything else.
I'm leaving now.
Thank God.
This drives me nuts.
What took you so long? So,
to keep on doing this, we're both a bunch of putts.
so, did you envision, my friend, the painting that we have just painted, and maybe not even a fraction of a conversation, pretty much imposing greatness on each other, and and humbly accepting the mediocrity of its level of that zone of comfort that allows him to think that it's eternal.
This has gotten out of hand. I think we're going to be thrown out of this land.
That's it.
Where we
So,
go, I don't know.
so now we're going to go back to the interview. That was very good, but that's just the beginning, um, because my ear is ringing, and
And I'm singing.
and yeah,
And you
um,
don't want to hear my voice.
yeah, I would rather hear you hum, um, than feel the slum and over the
It's
bump,
like sitting on your bum.
losing my tire. Just paid $179 for a new one, and now I have to buy again.
From here on in, I will be mute, but I'm really not a newt.
Not a nude. Here we go. So I want to go to this first thing that we mentioned. The telling you. You know how sometimes you find yourself in a situation and say, what will happen if I just suddenly stand up and in this distinguished moment will just say, what the fuck? And sit down. And to your left is the Queen of England. To your right is King Abdallah from Jordan. And in the back is Putin and whatever, Gandhi. What is it going to claim from the moment? It doesn't matter. You can invent a scenario, like for example, uh, what is it? You're invited to dinner. You're there in the middle of dinner. You take a glass of wine and pour it on the head of the one that sits next to you
I
for
think
no evident reason. What is going to develop due to that is something that you need to get yourself to a point, as I described, to be able to ask it and wait with the answer, as if you need to rush to your studio or to the space where you can paint if you want it instantly. And then you allow the answer to come in and tell you. Whatever the answer is telling you, what it thinks the scenario that will unfold due to that act of yours will be like. So, this is your painting. You must be an action painter if only because you need to capture that which is available to you that happens to be very elusive. I mean, it's there, it's happening fast. You blink your eyes, it's gone. You have to wait and it doesn't come by that often. So you have that respect. You have that. That's how I envision creating your own storm and the solution to the storm by way of protecting yourself, or even just simply preventing yourself
Wait,
from getting wet. Even
you have two things you're dealing with. Okay, if you're sitting down, standing up, sitting down, whatever environment you're in, with the people that you mentioned, okay, you have to realize nothing separates you from them. Everybody's human. The fact that they got to where they are, whether through circumstance, inheritance, wealth, greed, murder, whatever it is that is involved in their progression from being a baby into the position that they're in today, of total power, total control, however they exercise that. And you're leaving that environment and going home and you're going to paint. How does that affect you? It's got to affect you, except you have to come to the realization they're no different than you are in your own world, in what you envision each day, what you do each day, puts you in a position of your own power, and you have to rely upon your own strength. And that's how you go about painting. Would you translate being at a dinner party with Putin, the Queen of England, and God knows who else, and translate that into painting? It might be anger, it might be hatred, it might be love, it might be envy, it might be greed, it could be a whole host of emotions. Will it affect your painting? I'm not sure. I think that you would go
What will
about,
it
and I
do?
would go about painting.
What will it do though? It's got to be doing something. What do you think it will do?
I think there's a
It doesn't have
certain
to be
amount.
something big, by the way.
I think with the people you mentioned, I think you're going to be painting something very powerful, however whatever it is that you create, because there is a underlying anger that you will leave that group with, for the simple reason that the people that you have surrounded yourself with or been invited to or however you got there are people that are not beneficial to you, to me, or to the masses of people that live on earth. They're people that are sustaining their lives for the sole purpose of greed, power, money, etc. And they're not interested in what you create or who you are. They're interested in what they can accomplish for themselves. And it ends there, starts there, and that's all there is. Um, and that has to leave you with a very strong emotion, not only intellectually, but emotionally. And that's going to come out in your painting. The first thing I think of is taking a brush with whatever color is right there and just painting a huge, powerful stroke across the canvas. And maybe with that, I'd walk away and say it's done. I don't know, but will it affect you? Yes. It would be nice to sit down with another group of people like Gandhi, like Jesus, like whoever you can think of who has been kind to people, beneficial to people, has helped people, has spent their lives dedicated to people, and walk away with a totally different emotion, one of enlightenment, one of love, one of kindness. And would your painting be different than the one that was filled with anger? Absolutely. And that's the only way I can answer you. Yes, the people around you will affect how you survive, how you move on, what you create.
So, eh, I don't know. Is it viable to think that if you were not to go through, let's say, an establishment to get an official education, that will always be helpful, really? And but then you find yourself actually not going through that, not by choice. It's just because that's the way things unfold, and you realize that by trying to be as loyal to the process as possible, you're already achieving something that all the education in the world will teach you to do. So when you realize that much, you realize that actually you're earning your acceptance and recognition by the world, by the community, just by the fact that they realize that you come with your own way, with your own effort, with your own space, and represent something that the establishment would expect from you after it gives you so many tools and understanding how to use the tools uh, in order to paint.
I think
So it's the satisfaction of that of society, actually, of that particular establishment, that gives you the indication that you're actually on the right track, on the right way, and you need to be encouraged enough to maintain that attitude that you carry and to implement it down to the last detail, down to a science. So suddenly your task becomes more technically oriented, more kind of artificial almost,
mm,
more like, you know, feeling the paint, touching the paint, smelling the paint, um, thinking about drying time, thinking about the limitations of things that you cannot
I'm
do
not.
due to the nature of the paint. I'm saying I'm tedious now for a
I
purpose.
understand, but the one there's a real separation. There's learning how to paint, the basics of painting.
Yeah, but once you have that at
But
your
then, but
disposal,
then you're
then what?
pushed. But then you're pushed out the door.
Everything I said right now is after after I
Yeah,
realized that I know how to
nobody,
paint.
nobody ever told me what to paint. Nobody ever showed me that's what you should paint. All they did was
Do you
provide the
think the
foundation.
establishment shows you what to do once you realize you know how to paint?
I think that there are a lot of people who are tuned into what's current and what's going on in the art world.
You like a politician. You don't really answer the question.
I'm answering the question. I think you you paint what you want to paint. I paint what I want to paint. I don't look to see what the galleries are selling, whether it's abstract art or traditional art or blue art or whatever it is. Couldn't care less. I paint what I want to paint. And it's that simple. Although there have been times where I walked into a gallery and somebody said, if you can paint this, I can sell it. And I did it. And it was great. But it changed over time into what I wanted to do, not what the gallery wanted. So what was in me came out. All of the foundations, all of the things that I learned about painting are about painting. They're not telling me at any point what to paint. That has to come from within you. What you're painting is because you want to paint that.
But
You're not painting murals on a ceiling like Michelangelo.
you, but you would find yourself at a crucial moment fairly in the beginning once you realize that indeed you acquired the skills. Yes, you were talented. Yes, all these things that we don't even want to talk about because it's a given. Mother Nature, given by birth. But now you need to you realize that you can go back to nakedness instantly, and that's not something you'd really rather have, because you came from that, from nakedness, and you dressed yourself slowly but surely to find yourself that you actually arrive to a point where you're happy with your outfit. It feels good, looks good, it's simple. I can wear this forever because I can put it in the washer dryer in 1 hour, it's ready for the next day. That's a good place to be. But now these questions, you feel very vulnerable and exposed because nobody took the time to tell you, by the way, in case you succeed, in case you prevail, and get to the point where okay, and now you need to figure out, well, what am I doing now? So not everyone has that talent where they can say, okay, after acquiring the skills and the tools, I know what I'm going to do with it. So now they realize that this in itself is a difficulty, an obstacle, a problem, a, a complexity of a reality that will not just take care of itself and fix itself, answer itself. It's all you 100%. So you need to find yourself being able to give yourself a complete crash course, short and snappy, that will put this aside, clear some clogged venues, avenues, whatever, veins, and when you come back, it's almost colonoscopy. You go for a couple of minutes, you come back, you slept for eternity, but it was only 5 minutes, and now you're saying, okay, yeah, of course,
I think you're
as
taking.
if you never had that
I
this ability to begin with. You find yourself actually in another scenario, which is a second chance, maybe a third chance, but you're going to prevail this time.
I think you're
You know
making
you're going to
something.
prevail this
Yeah,
time. You know it.
but I think you're taking something and making it far more complicated than it is for you or me and other
But
people.
I do it on purpose. I mean, it serves my purpose on purpose.
It serves your purpose
Yeah, I'm
when.
not telling you that I think you should do this way, that way. I'm just telling you,
Well, I'll ask you a question. When you have a blank canvas up on the wall, do you know what you're going to paint?
yes,
Okay, there's the answer.
9 out of 10 times,
You
definitely,
know what you're going to paint.
absolutely.
You don't draw anything out.
You-
You don't make sketches.
No
I've
freaking way.
never done that.
Never in my life,
How
not even
many
once.
artists do you know who have to? You brought up somebody before, Michael Keegan. Okay, everything was drawn out. Everything
Yeah,
was laid
but
out.
that but that's
That's a. Those are.
but I knew enough not to pay attention to this. I never saw it.
I
What I
agree. I
saw,
agree with you.
because the end result, he had to take a lot from himself, extra, in order to show who he is as an artist. And suddenly these lines become blurry.
Does it
And
really make?
lucky for him that they almost like dissipated and left the scene in order to show what this artist was doing.
Does it really make any difference in the end how you get the final painting? And
Not,
we're only dealing with
no.
painting. Does it make any
Good
difference
point.
how you
No.
get the final painting done?
Good point. Good point. No.
Doesn't make any
No,
difference.
doesn't make
I
any.
agree.
I
If somebody draws out their landscape and they put in the trees with pencil and they put in the barn and the clouds and everything
I
and
don't
then
care if they
paint,
take the tree and
it
put it
doesn't
on the
make any
canvas and go through the
yeah,
lines and take it.
doesn't make any
It
difference.
doesn't
It's
matter.
the end result.
Yes.
For
But would
you,
you want to try and answer why it doesn't make a difference?
because nobody knows how it was created. What's done in the studio is done in the studio. Only one person knows. That's you. That's me.
Why some people would ask you as an artist, would ask me, how do you, I mean, how did you do that? Or certain things within the painting or the painting itself. A lot don't ever ask me this question. A lot gives you the feeling like they will never ask you a question like this. They will never ask you how long did it take you to do this tape
It's
painting.
irrelevant.
But it's relevant to those who want to know.
The
But
answer
the
to
thing,
them is the
but
answer to somebody who asks you how long did that take you to paint or
but
how
the
did you
thing, no,
paint
no,
it.
but I'm more compassionate and forgiving. I want to know what is it that causes someone to want to know, other than the obvious answer. How how did you do this? Because the other person tells you, I like it, and I know I cannot do it if I wanted to, because I look and I cannot find myself there. Technically speaking, I need your help. And you want to tell him, actually, I understand, but thanks, but no thanks. It is. Today I showed my painting to someone who's very known, very whatever, and he said he was very intrigued by the painting, but he said, explain to me. Where do I start?
You don't.
No, no, no.
You
He
have.
he wanted. He wanted. This is
I was.
someone asks you a question. Someone that you felt comfortable enough to show your artwork to. Just a snappy, just the one. So what did I learn from this interaction? Is my answer to him was, press here. So he pressed, and I said, okay. You invited the entire painting into that spot. You completed that complete cycle. You're done. He says, what do I mean? I said, press there. And he pressed there, put his finger. And I said, that's it. You're done.
Have I
He
ever
said,
once
what
asked
do I
you?
mean?
Uh,
But even when, this is someone who knows about art. This is someone who's powerful. So then I'm realizing, because I need to answer him a question in a level that's very demanding. There's a person in front of you cannot get away with nothing. And if you're not careful, you can think you're the most brilliant, but he will think you're making a fool of yourself. So in that moment I captured, I I realized that I wanted to tell him, thank you, I love you for asking this question, because I learned something here. Now pay attention to what I said. You point out wherever it is, and that's it. You go from there or you don't go anywhere. But you point out, and that's all it takes.
Have I ever asked you what you mean with your paintings?
No, never.
Never. And why is
That's
that?
why we can
Why is that?
expand the space between us.
I don't think anybody, I don't care how
Because you
great
know
they
what
are,
it means already. That's
I know
why.
what it means.
So why would you
You
ask
know
if you
what
know
it
what it means?
means.
Yeah.
Somebody who asks you the question that this supposedly highly educated and knowledgeable person asked you is um, a question that's not to be asked. What do you mean by your painting? My answer is, what do you think it means? I have never, ever given anybody a description of what I intended to do, what the painting means. My answer is always, what do you see in it? What do you think it is? Especially with abstracts. It's you can get five people looking at the same painting and get five totally different interpretations, which is what you set out to do. And I think that's the only answer that you can give to somebody. I don't care how knowledgeable they are, how successful they are, how great they are. If they ask a question, what did you mean? That's a stupid question. They, of all people, should know, because they've had their paint or sculpture or whatever it is out there, that the simple question is, how did you come about doing that? And that goes back to the same question that I asked you. Do you see the painting when the canvas is white? Your answer was yes. You know what you're going to paint. Do I know what I'm going to paint? Yes. Do
If
I know every detail of it? No, but it develops as you paint.
if people would have known, really, now on a serious note, not that we're not serious, how easy it is to approach a canvas and to start a painting and to finish a painting, they would paint more often. It's so easy. It
For
really
you,
is. No, no, no. It's easy universally. It's just you need. If someone was to approach me in 1996, really, really, a first show, April of 1996, I think, or 97, whatever, at Ashwa Hall, with the great help of my girlfriend there. She told me, hey, listen, you started painting. She noticed. And then she comes every weekend from the city and she sees, like, already then I had this kind of productivity. And she's seeing it's beefing up. After like a month, she said, I think you have enough show pieces. I said, yeah, I know I have enough pieces for solo exhibition, but I never shown in my life. I'm not an artist. What are you trying to tell me? She said, no, you leave that to me. So I had that person in my life that say, leave that to me. Getting Ashwa Hall, leave that to me. Telling you that this is not something that's going to make you look bad, leave that to me. I'm telling you.
but I had a
But,
very different
but,
experience than you.
I know, but what? But no one came to me and told me what it is that I can tell anyone how to approach a blank canvas, start it, and finish it. And at the end of it, not realize that you're not exhausted and you're not like wasted and you didn't spend too much energy to get to that point to see it and that you're actually feeling comfortable with the painting. Nobody. So it took me so long because it took me to avenues where I started questioning my self-esteem, my place in the community, and I at that point when I started, I really respected a lot. I still respect, but I had this honest, this thing like respect, respect, respect. So I was scared, I was confused, I was all these feelings, all these extra turns, so much energy until I got there myself. If I would have had the same person like me then approaching me and telling me, hey, by the way, this, that, and then I would say, wow, I cannot believe he just said that to me. So I'm just going to the canvas, testing it, realizing it works. That's it. That's it.
I had a very I can relate to what you're saying. It's just my background is very different. And it's not a matter of bragging, but I started out very differently. I started out as a child.
Are you gonna like brag
No,
and
I
show off
don't want to
now?
brag, so I'm not even bringing it up.
Are you
But I
gonna show off?
started as
I don't mind you showing off, but just tell me, are you gonna show off
no.
now?
The answer is no.
Are
All
you
I'm
sure?
saying is that I'm positive, okay, because I want to stay friends.
Are you sure that?
I'm positive, okay? Rest assured.
Okay, you're not
No,
going
I'm
there.
not bringing it up,
You're not going
okay?
there.
Not going there.
Okay. Except that you can say that you had your first solo exhibition when you were 9. That you're allowed to say.
Look,
With whom? With Andy Warhol.
I'm not bringing it up, and it
How
was
many times
11.
did you meet Andy Warhol?
Plenty. In fact, I brought Andy Warhol to Art Expo. See, this is the sentence. I brought Andy Warhol to Art Expo, to our booth, to sign his posters that we published. The company I was with, we published his first poster of the Brooklyn Bridge. So it was nice being with Andy
You
Warhol
have any
in the
left?
booth. Unfortunately, no. I wish I did.
How about I come to your
We
studio
all make
basement? We'll go over. I'm
we all
sure.
make mistakes about not keeping things.
Listen, I'm sure there's a few of them somewhere.
Though they're out there and they're worth a lot of money. I just don't have
In
any.
your basement. I mean,
There are other things in my basement. But you know, we all have different backgrounds. We all have different processes. For me, it's very interesting. When I finish a painting, when it's finally hanging on the wall in the house, in the gallery, in somebody else's house, whatever it is, it's as if I didn't do it. I can look at it from an objective point of view, not relating to it as mine. So I can criticize it. I can look at it. I can say a year later, 2 years later, 5 years later, I should have done something else with it. But you know what? It's done. I'm moving on. It's over with. And I think that's the important, that's the only way you progress is that you have to keep doing something different every time you paint. Don't repeat. And I think that's the failure for me of an artist if they continue to paint consistently throughout their life the same thing. They don't grow, they don't progress. And there are a lot of people who call themselves artists who, if you took something from 1980 and you took something from 2003 and you put them next to each other and took the dates off, you wouldn't know the difference. That to me is lacking creativity. I think that you have to, you have, as an example, you've moved from whatever time you started painting to where you are now. And if you put them up on the wall, they're totally different. Same thing with me. You go through periods, you change, your colors change, your design change, everything, the way you paint changes, everything changes. It's called growth. It's called creativity. And that has to go into the artwork, whether it's sculpture, writing, whatever it is. If you're standing still, you're not growing. And if you're not growing, why paint? Why sculpt?
Yes, I agree.
And that's
And
that's the point that I
uh,
would leave it at.
yes, and um, and I want to add to this equation to say that it's never enough, really. It's never enough to understand those basics. Like I had two people in my life, maybe more, but two major, Fraser Dougherty and Dr. John Sarno, that did things such as repetition, 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 repetition. Like Dr. John Sarno say, eh, you know, I remember Dr. John Sarno with the TMS, tension mycete syndrome, that saved my life. I read his books. I went to see him. I did a workshop at NYU at his workshop. It was awesome. He swore by me. He said, I'm a great example to how things can prove themselves that they work. With me, he said, you don't need anything. But even when I suggested I will come to the workshop, that was $1,000. He said, you don't need to come and all this. I said, I need to meet you and all this. And there, I remember he gave me a physical to rule out, and I had to bring some CTs and X-rays, whatever, so you can rule out any other scenarios that can
Right.
cause you, that indeed it is a TMS. And then he checks you out, and then he said, "Okay," he told me, "You're welcome. You're a perfect TMS candidate. I welcome you to the workshop." Before we went to the workshop, because I was in his office, he said, "Let me tell you something very, very important." Now, this guy, 85 years old, a famous surgeon, a philosopher, a psychiatrist, a psychologist, an artist, very well known, very powerful. And he says, let me tell you something very important. I want you to pay attention. Don't you forget what I'm telling you now. And he goes on to tell me something that he told me probably 30 times. So I immediately, my instinct say, what's wrong with this guy? Why is he doing it? Going back to Fraser Dougherty used to tell me, when you come in, when I used to come in the morning, remember? 6:30 a.m. I'm here for 12 years. He says, as soon as you come to LTV and you put the key in and you kind of go to turn it, you might as well just turn it back again, take the key, and go home. You accomplished your mission. And okay, fine, he can say it once, twice, but he said it 1,000 times to me. And he always told me before he was saying these things to me, listen up. I'm going to tell you something very important. And he keeps on doing that. And this where that kind of, in order to prove that the truth is simple, it takes that level of stubbornness, that level of hitting your head against the wall. That's what it takes for that to sink in. Because your system doesn't want to believe that it's so easy. So there's a fight anyway, and now you're adding another fight that the system's saying, no, 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 this is too easy. This solution is too simple. You know what I mean? So you kind of derailing the process. You never get to a point where you can really, really check to see if it works because you have to wheel and deal with crap. So here, that repetition. And anyway, so we did the workshop. What was the workshop? A repetition of things that I knew by heart because I read all the books 12 times each. Took notes 1,000 times. Knew everything there is to know. He also created a group of psychiatrists and psychologists that will treat people the TMS style.
Mm-hmm.
When I went to one and he said, you don't need to go. looked at me and he said, you achieved already what this book suggests that one can achieve. You don't need to bother. But I asked him to send me to the psych. What do you think the first thing that the psychologist slash therapist did when I came into the office? Came to me, shook my hand. So nice to see you. I heard so much about you. I'm looking forward to learn from you. And you would think something is wrong with her, but nothing is
No,
wrong
there
with her
was something wrong with you.
because she knows that if Dr. John Sarno sends me to her, he's telling her this guy has been through everything. He knows everything.
There was a moment in my life that I can go back to, which was because I remember it.
Before I finish, why did I say all that? Because just 20 seconds. Because I wanna. I wish I could have heard from someone telling me, listen up. This is simple. I'm gonna tell it to you. It's a huge secret. Practice it. Follow it. It is like this. So my system would say, if I don't know enough, if I don't know good enough, if I don't know enough to realize that he's not just a weirdo, that this is real. So I'm going to follow. I'm going to be stubborn, and I'm going to face it. And through this technique of stubbornness, suddenly I will be allowed to paint that painting. And that allowance just brings everything to life. Everything that we have, Mother Nature, everything comes. You don't even know what's going on, and it's done. That's the point I was trying to raise.
For me, there was a moment, I was 14 years old, the only person that wasn't a college student going to the new school in the city, taking sculpting lessons with Haim Gross, famous sculptor.
Love it. Love it.
And we had a live model. So for me to be 14 with a live model was almost unheard of. So I had to get special permission to go into the class, but because of my background, I was able to
No
go into the
wonder you're
class.
screwed.
So I'm
I always knew
sculpting.
something is wrong with you, so now I know why. Age 14 with a hard on.
No,
No,
didn't even bother me
sorry,
because it wasn't
I
the first
take
time
it back.
it was not the first time it was
I
in a
take
live
it back.
class.
I take it back.
Okay.
It wasn't. I shouldn't have said that.
So
I apologize. Do you forgive me?
I forgive you. So I'm sculpting, and Haim comes over and he says, "What are you doing?" And I said, "What do you mean? What am I doing? I'm sculpting."
Both hands.
He said, "You're sculpting with both hands, the front and the back." He said, "Look around the room. Do you see anybody else sculpting with both hands?" I said, "No." He said, "Why are you doing that?" I said, "It's the only way I can tell how the front and the back of the head is supposed to be where it belongs." He said, "I've never seen that in any of the students that I have had or the way I sculpt." And I said, "You're a great sculptor. Is it relevant that I sculpt with both hands or one hand? Does it make any difference?" And he looked at what I was doing. He said, "In your case, it doesn't make any difference. You're accomplishing exactly what you need to accomplish. And it's something I haven't seen, but it's great."
And it takes a master to be able to tell you that,
And he
correct?
gave me a letter, which I have to this day, written in pencil or pen, signed by Chaim Gross, about where he thought my future would be, what he expected for me to do in the future. And that moment stuck with me because of all the teachers that I had, he was probably the most influential, didn't care how I was doing the work that I was doing, saw something that he hadn't seen before, accepted it, encouraged it, and that helped me go on. And you know the rest of my education and, all the things that I've done. But I think that it doesn't make a whole lot of difference. We're going to finish up. A
Yeah.
whole lot of difference what your foundation is. It's where you are today, what you're creating today. Most importantly, is that we're still creating.
Yes. I just wanted to mention that we're sitting here with Steve Romm, here with the Hello Hello show. Um, Thursday late afternoon, early evening. I guess it's about what 4:30, 4:30. Yeah, because this is the one they didn't change the clock here. Typical.
Maybe we can warp
And
time.
and then we yes, November 9th, year 2023. Wanted to mention this coming Saturday we have the opening here. Saturday the 11th between 4 and 6 with Justin Greenwald, Chris Lecur, and myself with some of my new work on display for the month of November. So this coming Saturday, of course, you're all invited. We would love to see you and celebrate with you. And so I wanted to take the chance. We have 5 minutes, maybe 4.5 minutes. We devout 55 minutes. Uh, the you know the rim shot. You know what a rim shot is?
Yes.
Okay, so the rim shot. As a drummer, I know I understand what a rim shot is. The rim shot was perceived once as a mistake, as an accident. You have the drum, you have the skin, you have the rim. If it touches the rim, at some point it was considered like we need to go all the way back to square one and start recording. There's no good. So now rim shot is actually a part of the equation of the arsenal of tools or whatever you want to call it. So in art, sometimes I gain a powerful position over some obstacles or some kind of questionable moments where I know that easily I can find myself so behind so instantly, and I know also enough, to be stupid enough to make it happen and lose, and so I always keep focused. So I will end up in the now, in the here. Then I won't have to just say, okay, the last 3-4 hours that I was here was just like wasted. I have to go all the way back and do it. So all these things, as far as the rim shot, introducing that reality onto the canvas, this is what makes me able to start and finish a painting, and to start a painting without too many, questions and wonderings. Yeah, those questions, wondering, yes, but they're not cannot be used as a deterrence. They won't end up being the factors that will slow me down or prevent me altogether from actually initiating and delivering. Go ahead, this
Um,
send forth. So, and I know that the friendship with you gives me that extra layer, an additional stage, and and I thank you for that.
we have a show coming up, your show coming up at Ashwag Hall on the 18th. And I will say that the painting that I'm doing for you, I went back to 1961 when I first started doing some things that were really different. My freshman year of college. I think I may have still been in high school, I'm not sure. But I no, it had to be college. I went back to that and incorporated that because it held up all these years. And I went back to that and incorporated with things that I'm doing now, which is almost 2024. And I look at what I'm doing and finishing, and I'm really pleased with it. To know that I was able to do something as far back as 1961 that was successful at that time and still is successful, for me, is a major accomplishment. I'm really pleased with what I did at that time, that I'd learned something, accomplished something. And I look at it, how many years ago is that? 60 some odd years ago? That it's held up all this time. And that if I went back to doing the same thing today, I'd still have that ability to do that.
Wonderful. Well said. We're going to be here tomorrow as much as we were here yesterday and as much as we're here this morning, this afternoon, this evening. You wouldn't know anyway. So,
It's time.
it's time, yes. November 9th, year 2023, on a Thursday early evening, here with the Hello Hello Show. And my name is Haim Mizrahi. Thank you to my guest, Steve Romm. And we know you're out there doing your best, and we appreciate that. And we also appreciate the energy and the level of commitment that really, as I said, helps probably more than most of you know. So keep up with whatever the task is. And we're there with you and for you. God bless. We'll see you soon.